Water levels suck. Floaty movement, minimal visibility,
Hello, Mario.
and timers. Yeah, that's pretty much the perfect recipe for having a bad time. I'm pretty sure the only reason why games still have underwater sections is so that they can still have underwater music. If you're new to this channel, hi, I'm Flowerhead, and I'm a video game composer. And this is episode 2 of Somewhat Good, a series where I remake classic video game music genres. And you can even download all the songs for free and use them in your games if you'd like. Link in description. In this episode, I made an entire album filled with water level themed tracks. So, of course, today's episode is... In the fast and action-packed world of video games, water levels dare ask the question, what if we slowed down a little bit? And naturally, the music reflects that. Soft, ethereal soundscapes that are somehow both soothing and mysterious at the same time. If I had to describe it, it's basically the kind of songs you get in a 3-hour chill Nintendo music mix. But what makes water level music so special? Why does it elicit such an emotional response from so many people? And why does it sound so wet? Okay, so before we get all nerdy, I want to show you how easy it is to make lazy water music. Let's take my song Dolphin Shores from my Peach album and put it in Super Mario Galaxy real quick. Now watch, all I'm gonna do is add a low pass filter the moment I go underwater. And there you go, instant underwater music. Perhaps even add a little bit of reverb and it works even better. But why does this work? Alright, time to get a little nerdy. So, sound is basically just wiggly airwaves, but not all airwaves are equal. Some are longer and can travel far distances, the lower frequencies, and some are super wiggly and weak and can't go very far, the higher frequencies. Now, let's say I'm standing right next to a sound source. At the moment, between me and the speaker, it's just plain old air, and all the frequencies have no trouble reaching my ears. But let's say I'm suddenly underwater. Now, the weaker higher frequencies can only go so far before they're completely inaudible. But the lower frequencies are much longer, and because of that, they interact with the water molecules way less, which makes it possible for us to hear them, even underwater.
So that's exactly what I'm doing when I add the low pass filter.
A low-pass filter gets rid of the higher frequencies above a certain cutoff. And like this, we can perfectly mimic what happens in real life. And you can continue to lower the cutoff the deeper you go. But that's the lazy way. And you're not lazy, are you? Right? Okay, if you want to be lazy, the proper way to do it is to take the exact same song and make an underwater version of it. So when you jump into water, it's a perfect switch that sounds great 100% of the time. Now, that technique is more for levels that have underwater sections as an extra. There's a bunch of levels like that, but we're not talking about water adjacent areas like that today. That's a completely different album. We're talking about proper subaquatic water levels. So why did I tell you about all that? That's because the idea still kind of applies. This muted and muffled sound that comes from actually being underwater influences directly the way composers write for underwater themes, even if they're not aware of it. These themes tend to have music with long, drawn-out notes with muted atmospheric pads, all in a very low frequency spectrum. You can see this in the instrument choices. Composers tend to use instruments like the harp, handpan, flutes, strings, sine wave melody leads. Think of round sounds, if that makes any sense. Okay, in more nerdy terms, it would be sounds that don't have a lot of overtones. Now, overtones sound quite complicated, and it is, but luckily you don't need to understand it, you just have to hear it. Let's compare a sound with little to zero overtones, like the sine wave, with a square wave that has a lot of overtones. As you can hear, round versus square, and for water music, we want the round. So next time when you pick your instrument, try and pick sounds that has this round quality. I'm gonna end the debate. Water is wet. And so your music should also be. But like, it's not like there's any kind of dial that you can just turn to increase the wetness of a sound. Okay, what the f? Reverb is awesome. Besides for those slowed plus reverb channels, Reverb has been an amazing addition to a composer's toolkit. Basically, what it does is create space by simulating what a sound would sound like if it was in a room. It could be a tiny shoebox, living room, or the largest concert hall you've ever seen. These are all parameters that can be set within the reverb. Now, the dry/wet dial on a reverb doesn't really have anything to do with water, it only refers to how much reverb is applied to your sound. But it might as well, as reverb in water themes is as common as finding a secret behind a waterfall.
I knew it. Oh dear. Oh, money. I'm rich.
As you probably know, water can be pretty wavy, but how do we emulate that in our music? Well, with the use of arpeggios. Besides sounding like something you will find on a pizza shop's menu, arpeggios have pretty much become a staple in video game water music. But what is it? Take this chord for example. Nice, right? But it could be a bit nicer. So how about instead of playing all the notes at the same time, we spread them out instead, so we get this nice wavy motion. It's such a simple technique, but it's so effective. And it doesn't just have to be upwards. You can change the direction. Or even change the order of the notes around. While I was listening to a bunch of water-themed music, I noticed that there was this one chord progression that would keep on popping up. You would start on the 1, move down to the flat 7, and then back to the 1. It has this wavy back and forth feeling. Essentially, we're just moving from the tonic chord, our home key, down a whole tone to the flat 7. We borrow this flat 7 from the parallel minor key, in this case, C natural minor. As this is a borrowed chord, it can sound a bit out of place, which is perfect for that mysterious underwater quality. We then complete the wave by going back to our tonic. This progression is honestly so simple, but it has a lot going for it. It feels like the chord progression is going underwater with that whole tone step down and then back up again to catch some air. And there is no more famous example of this progression than JayTheDevGuy from Mario 64. Now, JayTheDevGuy is pretty much the perfect accumulation of all the things we talked about. It has the muted electronic piano sound that almost sounds exactly how I imagined bubbles would sound like. It perfectly captures the space with subtle use of reverb. the entire song is underlined with a constant upwards arpeggio, and it uses the 1 to flat 7 chord progression. Now, it actually continues the downward trend of this progression by going down another whole step towards the flat 6, and then seamlessly works its way back to the 1. So, when it came to making the first track on my Water Levels album, I just completely stole, was strongly inspired by this chord progression in my totally original song called, what was it again? Wire Dogs? Are you serious? Okay, so technically I already made this song ages ago for a different project where I was making a song a day for a whole month. You can check that video out over here. But I thought it fit so perfectly, so I just added it into this album as well. It's actually such a simple song if you break it down. Just look how empty this arrangement is. That being said, I do think with underwater music, empty space is really important. You don't want to add too much, because instead of making a song, we're focusing a bit more on the atmosphere. We start the song with the classic 1 to flat 7 chord progression being played by electric piano, which is quite common in water music as it has that bell-like quality. It was sounding a bit thin on its own, however, so I added this electric organ, which I muted a bit with a low-pass filter and added a boatload of reverb on. And look at that, we already have 3 boxes ticked for our underwater theme, and I've barely started writing. So it's sounding good, but we need to start adding some layers. I add some strings, a bass line, and then finally a melody. You'll see as we go through the other tracks, but water level melodies tend to be very drawn out. It won't really consist of a lot of notes, just because the music is slower paced in general. So you have to be very specific with the notes you want. Alright, we're gonna be jumping from track to track for a little bit. I'm just gonna highlight interesting things as we go along. In Floating Downstream, I have this quite fast arpeggio phrase that gets repeated. Even though it's fast, it doesn't sound too out of place for an underwater theme, as we utilize what's called a pedal point. A pedal point is a note that stays the same whilst other chains around it. So in this case, even though we are jumping around, we're always returning to this pedal point, which gives it a much more grounded sound. A fun sound I also use in this is this alien sounding synth. I've noticed that unearthly, more alien sounds tend to work quite well for that underwater feeling, as much of the ocean is still a mystery to us, and to be honest, quite scary at times. He's right behind me, isn't he? At the end of the song, we move into this piano segment that's heavily inspired by the Zora's Domain theme from Breath of the Wild with these quick, hard arpeggios.
Hi, my name's Flowerhead, but you might know me better as the guy who says he's gonna stream, but then never does. Oh, what's that? My streams? I do stream, in fact, thanks for asking. All the music that I made in this video, I made live on twitch.tv/flowerheadvgm. Come join and make your own flower sona. That's a thing. Oh, and did I mention that this entire album is free, and you can download it in the description, and you can support me on my Patreon, because I have a Patreon at patreon.com/somewhatgood, and you can get early access and more? Wow. Oh, and there's also a Discord. It's free to join for now, but I'm gonna limit it at 200 members, so that you can only join if you're a Patreon past that. Alright, enough out of me, time to get back under the water.
Now, one of my favorite Wat-er-themed songs is actually not from a video game. I know. It's actually a piano piece from the Romantic era, The Sunken Cathedral by Debussy. This piece is hauntingly beautiful. It plays around a lot with empty space, big wide chords, and dark, dissonant low notes. Whenever I hear this piece, I've sometimes wondered if Debussy felt frustrated with the low note capabilities of a piano. A lot of the times the notes are so low that the entire piano reverberates with the sound and you can barely hear what notes he's playing. But then, the melody would rise out of this mushy dissonance to bring us into the sunlight again. Without changing anything of the piano, he's made it sound like it's being played underwater. So, in my song, Ocean Home, I try to incorporate that sound a little bit. I started with these wide, low, open chords that slowly make their way up. And over here I added some singing bowls, which is the most perfect underwater sound. And then we get to section B, where I strip away most of the atmosphere, and we're just left with this piano. The song's pretty basic, but I don't know, I really like this one. With my next song, Fish in a Bucket, I want to highlight a technique that I actually use in a lot of other songs. A perfect way to capture the sound of waves and such is by giving your sounds a slow attack. Now, in sound design, there's this concept called ADSR.
Attack, decay, sustain, and release. These 4 parameters are present in every single sound that you hear. The attack is how long it takes for the sound to reach its peak volume. Fast attack versus slow attack. The decay controls how long it takes for the sound to reach the sustain volume. And the sustain controls how loud the sound is when you hold down the key. And then the release is just how long it takes for the sound to fade out. Now, you can start to see why having a slow attack, and a slow release for that matter, might be well suited for more atmospheric settings. For this reason, pads are used extensively in this genre. For something a little bit more nerdy, I also used a spectral resonator, which, I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea what it's doing. Listen, I'm just clicking buttons over here. I basically only used this effect to put this ambient loop I found into the same key as the piece. And when I did that, the sound turned from scary to kind of heavenly.
So we all know arpeggios are great, but usually people tend to only arpeggiate upwards. So in the Wat-er tempo I did the exact opposite and instead arpeggiated downwards. It really gives this feeling of sinking lower and lower into the dark abyss. Combine that with an echo effect, you've got a pretty hypnotizing sound. Talking about hypnotizing sounds, for Wat-er music, composers tend to keep the music harmonically ambiguous. But how do you make your harmonies sound unclear? Now, don't freak out, but we're going to talk about some music theory here. In music, the most basic chord is a triad. It consists of the root, the third, and the fifth. The third, however, determines the quality of the chord, if it's major or if it's minor. Without the third, the chord quality is left ambiguous and open. So now, instead of a third, you can try out other combinations, like adding a second, or like in the case of my song, C Shaman, a fourth. These chords sound like the ellipsis of music, especially if you start adding sevenths. Just be wary, however, these chords strongly want to resolve back to the third. But it's also fine not resolving if you want to go for that uncertain feeling, which, in this case, we are trying to achieve. Oh, sorry. I'm just so sleepy. This chill Wat-er music is making me feel kinda tired. Let's try and wrap this up before I fall asleep. Okay. What haven't I talked about yet? Ooh, Crab Steiner. There's not much to say here. It's just a silly little tune. I know the ocean's all dark and mysterious, but it can be kinda goofy sometimes as well. Ah, the deep. For this one, I just used Wat-er sound effects for the percussion, and it probably is a bit on the nose, but I think it works. I tend to stay away from using sound effects in my music, but that's a whole other debate that I will probably get into my next video. So, you know, subscribe. Now, I don't know how it has taken me this far along in the album for me to realize that I needed a waltz. A waltz is by far the best genre of music to signify a Wat-er setting. It's basically a song in 3/4 time, with the strong beat happening on the 1. This rhythm is especially flowy and almost sounds like waves. I mean, just look at the most popular example of a water waltz theme, the underwater theme from Super Mario Bros. Or the underwater theme from Super Mario World. Or Deep Sea of Mare from Super Mario Sunshine. Oh, and even the underwater theme from... This chord progression is pretty simple. Like much of the other chord progressions, we're just moving from the 1 to the 4 and then back to the 1. But it sounds very relaxing because we instead go up to the 1/7 before going back down in this wave-like motion. That's probably like the 10th time I've mentioned waves in this video. We're also in the Dorian mode, which has a very melancholic sound to it. also have to give a shout out to the incredibly talented Beepo, an incredible VGM composer who I just blatantly stole this chord progression from. His stuff is incredible though, and he doesn't get a lot of views, so go and give him some love. Well, I've probably missed a few songs, but I think I've talked enough for this video. There's also this one song where I introduced drum breaks into the mix, but I'll save that discussion for a later album. It's hard to sum up the ocean in just a few songs, and I don't think we'll ever stop hearing new takes on the ocean theme for as long as video games will continue to exist. But I hope this video inspires you at least to try and make some of your own underwater themes. I'm excited to see what you come up with. Alright, it's that time of the video again. I asked the people on my Discord what their favorite underwater theme was, so now we get to see if they have good or bad taste. Ooh, starting with an easy one, Super Mario Bros. 3 underwater theme. Yeah, I think you sum it up perfectly. Short, but it's nice. Good taste. Wolfie says, Deep Blue from Ultra Kill. Alright, I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just old, okay? But I'm not a fan of this one. I love the game, but this song, yeah, bad taste. Alright, Super Mario 64 Dire Dogs. I mean, I can't really subtract any points here. It is a classic. Maybe it does clock you for being a basic B word, but it's still good taste. The Ancient Zora Waterworks from Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, I think this song is probably the perfect example of like using as little as possible to create an atmosphere. Good taste. Alright, what's this? Submerged Castle from Pikmin 2. What am I listening to? What is this? This is making me feel physically unwell. Bad taste, I guess. Let's move on before a curse is put upon my bloodline. Local game dev Pinapl says, Boy Base Galaxy always went hard. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of biased here since Super Mario Galaxy is just my all-time favorite. I have to say, good taste. Alright, we got 3 options in here, but I do see an aquatic ambience in that, so I'm just gonna have to say good taste and move along. Fellow composer Jaden coming with a stellar recommendation from the Okami OST, Dragon Palace. I actually haven't heard of this one before, but it's beautiful. Good taste. We have a weird one over here, the water theme from FNAF World, which apparently is a game. And Grape Nugget is right, it is unexpectedly very good. Good taste. Ooh, Hydro City Zone Act 1 from Sonic 3. This song sounds more Sonic than it does underwater, but it's still groovy, so who cares? Good taste. Apsu. I think Apsu is water music perfected. I don't think you can top what Austin Wintory wrote for that game. Good taste. And now I'm adding a new section to the show where you get to rate my taste. My favorite water theme is Riverside from The Legend of Zelda's Triforce Heroes. It has the most beautiful violin solo and harmonic switch-ups, and just listen to it.
They'll mix